Well, we've finally gotten to the end of our Studio Ghibli marathon, ending with the 2006 film Tales from Earthsea, directed by Goro Miyazaki, who is Hayao Miyazaki's son. In terms of ending our marathon, this wasn't really a high point.
Probably not, no.
Okay. The film is based on various stories set in the world of Earthsea, and Earthsea is this fantastical world from a series of books written by Ursula Le Guin. Books included in this series, The Wizard of Earthsea, Tombs of Autumn, and various others. Mm-hmm. I know I've read some of them a long time ago, but I don't remember them that well. Every so often during this film, I'd recognize a name of a place or a character, but that sounds vaguely familiar. But in terms of discussing the film, it doesn't really factor in.
I've never read any of them, so...
Yeah. The film's about a prince named Aaron who kills his father.
Yep.
For some reason.
No idea why.
And he travels off and he meets up with a mage called Sparrowhawk, who's kind of your typical wandering wizard.
Gandalf.
Yeah, kind of like Gandalf.
Pretty much.
And then they meet up. They go and live for a short time with this woman who's a friend and kind of potential love interest for Sparrowhawk. And then with her, there also lives a young girl who becomes a love interest for Aaron.
Yep.
And Sparrowhawk is kind of engaged in this ongoing conflict with this evil wizard named Lord Cobb, who is he's trying to discover the secret to eternal life.
As they always are.
Yeah. The problem... Okay, I didn't like this movie at all. It's definitely one of my least favourite of the films we've watched so far.
It's not as good as most, but it's better than some.
It's better than some. Alright, big problems. The story... Not that much happens.
Very meandering.
Yeah, it just kind of
doesn't really go anywhere.
There's they're on the farm for a long time and then they're wandering, but they're not actually... There's not much conflict until the last kind of 20 minutes of the film.
Very good conflict in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, the last 20 minutes.
But aside from that, at the very start as well, the opening scene is very good with the dragons.
Well, hang on.
Dragons.
Let's go on a big tangent on the dragons.
Yeah.
This film's kind of advertised very heavily with dragons. There's a great opening scene with two dragons fighting, and
cover
dragons on the front cover of the DVD. There's no dragons in this movie. They have no bearing on the film.
There's three dragons in this movie.
The very beginning, which is totally unrelated story, and the very ending, which has absolutely no bearing.
I'm going to disagree.
On the story.
The start, because the dragons are like the protectors of the earth or something, so it's showing that the earth's out of balance and the light and the darkness.
We're going to talk about the balance, are we? Okay. The dialogue in this film, in my opinion, Brett doesn't agree with me quite as strongly.
Not quite as strongly.
The dialogue is woeful.
Not woeful, it's not very good.
It is so overwrought, and they're constantly going on about the balance of life and
the lightness,
darkness,
the darkness,
and keeping things in tune with nature. I just couldn't help but roll my eyes.
I think Goro's taking it a bit too far on the nature message.
It's just so pointless. They say this stuff, and you're like, well, that sounds kind of vaguely poetic, but what does it doesn't actually mean anything.
I mean, I suppose it's setting up a lot of the plot points, why Aaron kills his father.
But even that is never really explained. It's just
it's because he's got the darkness inside of him, or something like that.
But what does that mean? What does it mean when you say there's the darkness inside of you?
That's the thing. That's why this movie's bad.
He has the darkness inside of him, and that's the explanation for why he does bad things. So I didn't like the dialogue. The characters weren't that interesting. The kind of the two exceptions would be one, Teru, who is the young girl. I thought she's
quite
more
interesting
than the other characters.
She's, I think, still a little bit generic, but not as much as the other characters.
And then the other character we thought was interesting was Lord Cobb.
Yes, the main
villain.
He's Michael Jackson, essentially.
It's a really confusing character. He's really skinny and pale, the feminine voice. He's just a weird, not very intimidating
wouldn't trust in
character.
Real life.
No, very. There are a few.
And at the very end, and he's extremely. He's just a weird character. This film seemed to be going for epic tale.
It seemed to be going for epic tale, kind of like
high fantasy.
Yes, exactly. Kind of almost
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings type thing. But just it's like that, but the dialogue was just weak. It was just like a really.
It kind of falls into middle fantasy, not high fantasy. It just doesn't achieve what it wants.
It's just really mediocre storytelling.
Definitely.
And just, it's not like I was totally bored. I wasn't sitting there just wanting to
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't engaged. I was kind of like, oh well, okay, that happened, and then that happened. But I honestly didn't care whether the characters lived or died or what happened. It didn't captivate me at all.
I mean, this is the second time I've seen it. I liked it a lot more the first time. I think I found it interesting the first time. This time, I was certainly sitting there going, this is not as good as I remember it. I remember it being a lot better, a lot faster, kind of.
Yeah.
It doesn't have very good pacing.
No, it just sits there.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, they're on the farm. Well, that's nice.
And that's what
we're going to go anywhere
It
soon.
felt like Lord of the Rings. You know, Lord of the Rings is very slow getting started as you get to know the characters, and then the last
Lord of the Rings
hour and a half
kind of,
is all this great action.
Yeah,
it was like that.
But the thing is, Lord of the Rings does it well.
Yeah.
This doesn't.
But okay, hang on. There are... Alright, one more complaint, then we'll go to the positives. Because there are positives.
There are some.
The ending just didn't make any sense.
No, the ending...
The ending just doesn't make any sense.
I mean, the ending was more epic than the rest of the movie, certainly.
Yeah, but it just like, why did that happen? Like, something happens, and you're like, that doesn't make pretentious. Any sense. It's just like, if you'd set this up, that would have been cool, but they didn't set it up. It just happened. Anyway, but if you've seen the film, you'll know what I mean. If you haven't, this is totally not helpful. All right, some positives. The animation's fine.
Not like fine. It is
not
kind
beautiful,
of
not memorable.
I'd put it on the same level as Howl's, but it doesn't look as good as Howl's.
So that's the thing. Again, we come back to animation in terms of quality. The technical level of animation is fine. The visuals aren't as great as Spirited Away or Howl's.
It suffers from the same problem that I mentioned last time, though. The moving backgrounds when things are moving against each other, it just doesn't look very good still. Slightly better than Howl's, but still not that good.
I definitely think... We talk about Goro Miyazaki. His first film, big shoes to fill.
Definitely.
With his father and all, especially because of the history of this film, which we'll talk about in a sec. Mm-hmm. It was competent. Like, the film looks fine. There were some couple of cool visual moments. I definitely think that Goro Miyazaki will continue to direct anime, and I think his films, if he gets a better script, will probably be much better.
I mean, it's not as clunky as Hayau's first movie. I mean, it's not as clunky as Nausicaa. I don't think it's as good as Nausicaa. No, certainly.
Nausicaa's more interesting.
Yeah,
but perhaps this is more competently made.
It's more competently made, but it has a worse kind of background.
Yeah, Nausicaa felt like it was a first-time director.
Yeah.
This doesn't.
As much.
Yeah.
As much, but it's still a little bit.
Other cool things, good music.
Definitely.
Really kind of Nordic Celtic thing we were going on.
I mean,
quite different to any other music in a Ghibli film.
Yeah.
But really worked for it suited the world that they had created.
Definitely. The main town especially had a great theme. It was very Scottish kind of thing, bagpipes in there, and it worked so well.
That's
wonderfully.
True.
I mean, it didn't seem like a kind of Scottish town or anything, but it suited what was there really well.
Definitely. All right, that's enough good talk. Back to
back to bad things. Yeah.
A couple of kind of things I wanted to discuss specifically with you. Firstly, the sort of comparison to Mononoke.
Yeah, there were a lot.
Just because
in there, in my
to
opinion.
start, the world is most similar to Mononoke we've seen.
I'd say so. Yeah.
It's kind of like a bad version of Princess Mononoke.
In a way, yes.
Like, the main character.
Main character has a horse. He's kind of not banished.
The warrior prince. He's exiled.
Not exiled, but he chooses to leave. But
he's got the whole darkness inside of him aspect.
Yes, the whole curse.
But in Mononoke, that's explained and it's interesting,
and it's done well.
Whereas in this, it's just kind of there.
Yeah.
So I think that the other thing that we kind of discussed before was because a lot of the problems with the film are story related. Like it's not necessarily directorial mistakes. It's dialogue, it's story, it's that sort of thing. And the thing is, perhaps we can't lay entirely the blame with that because maybe, and we don't. Like I said, I don't remember the source material.
Yeah,
the source material doesn't. Maybe it's the source material wrong. But the fact of the matter is, they chose to adapt this book, so you can't really blame Le Guin for the poor dialogue in the film because if the dialogue's that bad, you change it or you don't adapt this.
You don't adapt it, yeah.
But
on the
note of adapting the book,
Hayao Miyazaki originally wanted to make a manga of this before Nausicaa, and he couldn't get the rights, so he made Nausicaa instead, which is good in my opinion.
Good decision.
I'm thankful for that. He might have done it better. Who knows? Because he would have been rewriting it as a manga, so he might have done something very good with it, but I can't be sure.
Yeah.
I think it's best that it turned out that he did Nausicaa, but
Definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, Nausicaa and pretty much every other Ghibli film we've watched
It's
is
unique.
more unique than this.
Yes.
This is kind of generic. It's not terrible, but it's just not. It's not memorable.
It doesn't stand out.
And I guess we kind of need to wrap up the discussion because we're almost out of time. The one thing I would say is that even if you liked every other film we've discussed so far, possible exception being Kiki, but let's not bag Kiki again.
Always.
But there have been films I've really loved, and there have been films I haven't really loved. Like specifically, I'm thinking of
Totoro.
Wasn't a huge fan of
Porco
Totoro.
Rosso.
Didn't really like Porco Rosso. But even those worlds, even those stories were interesting. They're like,
Yeah.
I hadn't seen anything like that before. That's the thing I credit the Ghibli films with more. I'm constantly seeing things I haven't seen in other movies.
Yeah. Well, that might just be 17 anime though.
Well,
Who knows?
that's true. But this doesn't have that.
Definitely.
It's generic, and even if you like anime, even if you liked all the other films, I wouldn't say go and see this because it's not like those films. And honestly, I don't think it's worth watching.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement. Yeah.